the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 85 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can find me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, presented as always by TalkLoudRadio.com and GoingFor2.com, coming at you live every Friday night on Facebook Live, Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch, and streaming, of course, in the GoingFor2 app for iOS and Android. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. Just already missing drafting after getting one startup in the book, so I accidentally signed up for another today.
Accidentally signed up for another? How does that work?
I saw a post and I accidentally signed up when somebody asked me, even though I told myself I'd say no. So yeah, there's that.
Stuff. Yeah, I haven't had a draft yet. My first draft is my rookie draft for my Dynasty League, and that's going to be next Sunday. So. Getting super excited. Today I had a very interesting day of trades. I had about 4 consecutive trades, had Rojo on my team for all of about an hour, and I traded him away for a couple picks for next year. So, interesting day.
Big mistake, man.
Big mistake. I don't know, man. I don't know. I wasn't sold on Rojo, as you know, but in the offer that was given to me, I couldn't pass it up. So I ended up moving him immediately after trading for him. All right, tonight's guest, he's been on the show before, and I just found out before the podcast went live that he is now an official Mr. Dr. Ethan Turner. You could follow him at eTurnerFF_PT. He's an injury analyst for Dynasty 101, Dynasty Happy Hour, and FF Statistics. Ethan, man, how you doing tonight? And congrats, by the way.
Dude, I appreciate that. I'm feeling pretty good. Thanks for having me on again, guys. I obviously didn't do too bad the first time if you brought me back. So I appreciate that. This is actually the first time I've done a second podcast with somebody. So you guys are the first. You're like busting the cherry on that one. So that's awesome.
We just ran out of guests. We're like, let's just bring Ethan back on. We got nobody else. All right. Hey, so tell us the story. I know you kind of talked about it on the podcast last time about the guy, the podcaster that sort of said you're not a doctor kind of thing, and now that you are a doctor, you can kind of throw it back in his face.
Yeah. So I won't throw any names out because that's not my MO. But a very prominent podcaster in the fantasy football community. Basically, we had an altercation on Twitter that I did not believe was an altercation, but he was offended when I asked him if he wanted to read an article that I wrote last year for Fantasy Pros about Alshon Jeffrey and his shoulder and how I expected him to have a down year because of the shoulder injury that he was dealing with last offseason. So basically he went on this big rant. He made fun of my Twitter handle. He basically called me out, said that there's no reason for him to read my stuff because, in his words, he's not a doctor and neither am I. So luckily now that will never get to be said to me again. So that that's actually no longer something that can hurt my feelings because you can't take it away now. You know, the doctor of physical therapy is here to stay. So I appreciate the love though, because I'm happy to be done. 7 years is a long time. So
Yep.
7 years, I'm out. I'm done. I'm over it. I'm done with the school part. I'm ready to make some actual money and keep doing what I like to do, which is talk about injuries. So
All right, good stuff. And then so, you know, you're an injury analyst for a couple different places there. So tell me exactly, how do you go about doing that? Like, how do you decide who you're going to talk about? Do you go on, you know, these different shows and talk about, you know, injuries? How do you break them down, those kind of stuff?
yeah, so I have it's an interesting setup now because I'm studying for boards, so I'm actually not writing actively a whole lot. But with Dynasty 101, I do all of the injury risk assessment for 200 plus rookies a year. This year we added IDP, which was great because I've never played in an IDP league, but luckily injuries transfer. So all I had to do is find the injury histories. So I claim that is the largest collection of injury data on the 2019 class that exists outside of an NFL front office. And you can actually buy that for $4. Shameless plug. You can buy just the injury database for $4, which is just like, that's like 300 hours worth of work. So I'm selling you 300 hours worth of work for $4. So nice. I think that's a pretty good deal.
Let's hope you make more. Let's hope you make more than that as a doctor.
I'm going to make a little bit more than that as a PT. So that's good. Luckily, I'm not quitting my day job for that. But it does help me out a little bit because obviously it's a lot of work. For Dynasty Happy Hour and FF Statistics, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I don't really write for either site anymore. I wrote one article for Dynasty Happy Hour, but again, studying for those boards is just like consuming my life this summer, and also moving with my wife. So just a lot of chaos this summer. So I shut down the writing, but I am their in-house injury analyst. So if anybody writes an article for FF Statistics or for Dynasty Happy Hour and they need something, they need a quote on a guy that is injured, I do that. So
Nice.
I still find my name in a lot of articles for those sites, despite the fact that I'm not actually sitting down and like writing articles for them. So I get around.
Nice.
That sounds like a dream, man.
Yeah, that's the best thing right there. Let me get credit for that, but not actually write anything. That seems to be the best situation you can have right there.
You know, if I got paid, that would be even better. But it's okay. It's a good fit for me right now because, like I said, just the free time is it's non-existent. So normally it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm laying in bed and I'm giving people injury quotes. So it's a pretty good gig for me. I'll take it.
All right, good stuff. All right, so tonight's show, what we're going to do is we're basically going to go position by position and just talk about, you know, the big injuries, you know, guys that are coming off injury from last year, guys that may already be injured from the OTAs this year, or guys just in general that are constantly injury prone and what you think about them going forward. And then I want you to kind of give us a sort of a green light, you know, a guy that you're not really worried about, you know, good to go, draft him as you normally would. Yellow light, meaning you're a little worried about him. You know, you wouldn't draft him where his normal ADP is. Maybe if he slips down a little bit, you'll take him. And then red light players are going to be someone that you're just not going to draft. You'd let somebody else take that risk on a guy that you just don't want to deal with him. Sound good?
Sounds good, man. Hit me.
All right. So the first one I got on here, I know the news lately has been he's been back. He seems to be fully healthy, but it's a situation where this injury is one of those ones that can reoccur. And that's Carson Wentz, quarterback for the Eagles, of course. He had a back injury that he was dealing with last year. And for someone that, you know, I had back surgery in 2007, so I know how backs can be. What do you think of the situation with Carson Wentz? Are we worried about him?
Yeah, I think you have to be a little concerned because of this is a trend now. Not specifically with his back, but, you know, dating back to 2015, he had a broken wrist, had surgery in college. He had a rib fracture and missed the entire 2016 preseason. Then he obviously had the ACL tear and LCL tear in 2017, ended his year. And then last year he ended his season with this stress fracture and a vertebrae in his back. Now the good news is that stress fractures that are in a place where there's good blood flow, tend to heal pretty well. They're not really something that you have a ton of issues with. You're more worried about the back spasms and things that happen because you get into this kind of period of you're trying to protect your back when it's hurt, and then your back starts spasming up. So I think he could deal with some back spasms, but the vertebrae fracture itself should be fully healed before the start of this season. So I'm not super worried about that. Again, he didn't have back surgery, so that's always a good sign too. Sorry that you had back surgery. That sucks. But it's good for Carson Wentz that he didn't. That means that it probably wasn't an area where it was going to heal itself. So again, a yellow light. I think he's going to fall because of the 2 back-to-back injuries in the last 2 seasons and this injury history, but I think he's still worth taking in redraft and in Dynasty because you're still getting that discount because of the perception that he's injury prone.
Yeah, that's a good call there. I think that he is a very good value going right now in drafts. He's dropping, and you figure, 2 years ago before his first, major injury, he seemed to be like the next big thing. He was lighting it up. He was on a route to be the MVP. If you can get that guy for a late round, redraft pick, or if you got him in your dynasty league as a cheap buy, I'm definitely buying me some Carson Wentz. All right, Ryan.
Last year I didn't listen to you on him right before the Scott Fish Bowl. So,
and how did that work out for you?
I didn't listen to you about Carson Wentz before the Scott Fish Bowl. When is expected?
Yeah, they rushed him back last year. He was doomed for a bad season last year. So I expect a better result this season if you draft him.
Yeah, because he's one of the QBs I just literally just love everything he has on the field. Just off the field. Terrible with that.
Right.
Next one is, more I hear about it, the more I'm scared is Cam Newton. Like, no words been said. There's a lot of implications for a lot of guys on that offense. What are we expecting?
Yeah, so Newton's kind of he definitely had a lot of people pretty scared at the end of last season. I mean, when you have a regular person that doesn't really look at injuries the way that I look at them, going, oh my gosh, look at this guy, his shoulders all jacked up. You can tell by the way he was throwing, you can tell by the way he was playing, something was wrong. And whenever you see that and it's so obvious that anybody can see it, it's a big concern. The good news is that when they actually went in at the end of the season in January, he went in, he had the arthroscopic surgery, which is basically they just take a little camera and they poke some holes in your shoulder. They go and look and see what's wrong with it, and then they clean it up. What they found was that it was not as bad as they thought it was going to be, which is a good sign. If they had gone in and said it was worse, then we'd be talking maybe an Andrew Luck situation where we're not sure what's going to happen. But I don't think that's the case because since that surgery, every indication has been the damage wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be. You need to just take the discount and go buy Cam Newton because I think he's going to be ready week 1. He's already on the track to start throwing here in the next month or two. And I think that the injury discount you're getting with Cam is a lot safer, I guess, than the injury discount you're getting with Carson Wentz because really Cam hasn't had a ton of issues outside of this shoulder.
All right. Yeah. Good stuff. I like that.
Green light. Sorry.
Green light on that one. All right.
Beautiful.
Good stuff. Because I was just going to say, I actually have Cam Newton as my starting quarterback in my dynasty league. And I had backups. I had Josh Allen and I had Jimmy Garoppolo. But I just traded, I talked about the trades that I made today. I just traded Josh Allen away. So I'm left with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's next on my list, as a talk, as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, are we worried about him with the ACL? I mean, I've heard good things so far, but ACLs can be tricky.
Yeah. So with Garoppolo, the big thing with all ACL tears, is position and when they had it. So he tore his in week 3. Typically, you're looking for 1 year after the initial tear. That's when players start to get their mojo back. That's when they start playing at the production level that they were playing prior to the injury. And that 12-month mark with Jimmy G is happening basically right at the beginning of the season because he tore it so early last year. I mean, he's already back throwing in a limited fashion in OTAs. They don't have him going in full-blown 11-on-11 practices because they're being safe with him. I mean, they just paid him, $150 million last year. You're going to be safe with him. I think that he's good to go. Green light.
All right, good stuff. All right, Ryan, I know I skipped over one there, so you go ahead and talk about the next one.
I mean, we got to get back one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Is Aaron Rodgers on pace with his MCL to bounce back?
Yeah, so Rodgers was kind of an interesting case because he injured his MCL the first game and didn't ever really get back to the form that you would expect him to. An MCL injury is one of those injuries that typically players come back from. It's well vascularized. There's good blood flow. It heals itself. You don't usually need to go in and do a surgery on it. Obviously, Rodgers didn't have surgery on his knee. But then he comes out this offseason and said he also had a tibial plateau fracture. So the tibial plateau, the tibia, your shin bone, the plateau is basically the top of it that sits in the knee joint. And it's an interesting injury because usually they don't respond very well to treatment. Usually you have to have, depending on the size of the fracture, you might have to have surgery. Obviously he didn't, which means that you're looking at probably a very small fracture, but it's one of those injuries that doesn't go away until you give it some rest. So it's not surprising that he couldn't shake that portion of it. So I think that will be healed up this year. The MCL shouldn't be an issue at all. He's a green light for me as well. I think he's going to be good to go.
All right, good stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and just knock out these last two because they're a little bit on the smaller scale. We got two quarterbacks that, probably backups in most leagues or in late round redrafts for guys who wait on quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota with his nerve issue, and then Andy Dalton with his torn ligaments in his thumb. Talk about these two guys a little bit.
Yeah, I would say I'm more concerned with Mariota with the nerve issue. Nerve injuries take a long time to heal. Again, it's one of those things where really there's nothing you can do except for rest it. So I'm not surprised that he had a down year after it kept bothering him, and then he had a neck issue, and then you're like, what the heck is going on with this? But the good news is that he should be healthy. He's adding weight. He's up to about 230 right now, according to reports. That's usually a good sign for a mobile quarterback to add a little bit of weight. Hopefully he's not taking as many big hits, but the team has already come out and said, hey, we don't trust you to stay healthy this year, and they went and got Ryan Tannehill. Mm-hmm. So he's a yellow light for me. He's going so late in drafts, it doesn't really matter. You can still take him because he's going way past what he could give back to you. So not super concerned about the Stingers coming up again because he's so cheap. Andy Dalton, green light, thumb injuries, they happen. Dalton's had a few issues with that thumb already. Some torn ligaments. They're easy to fix. They should rehab well. Zach Taylor's coming in. It's clear that this is kind of Dalton's last chance, but as far as health, I'm not really super concerned about him.
I mean, he should be a red light because he's Andy Dalton. But,
I missed the boat there, but he's a red light because he's not very good at football, but he's a green light from an injury perspective.
Good stuff.
Now, I think we should hit the most important guy fantasy football injury-wise, and it's the one everybody wants to know. That's Todd Gurley.
Yeah, so this is big. This is big money here because Todd Gurley he's elite. I mean, there's no question about it. And this injury is one of those things that we have not gotten clarity on it yet. I've been watching and waiting for something to happen. Something else is wrong with his knee. What is it? I don't know. All we're hearing is that it's arthritis. He's having pain. Okay, that's reasonable. Typically, 80% of players that have an ACL tear like Gurley did in their teenagers have early onset arthritis within 10 years. It's well established. It's not surprising that is the case. What is surprising is that it's bothering him to the point where he's only playing limited snaps in the Super Bowl. That is a concern. But I think part of the issue is that the team has decided that it was a good idea to run Gurley straight to the Super Bowl and give him 300-plus touches again for the third straight season. Is that the most effective way to keep your star running back healthy? Absolutely not. Nobody is made to carry the ball 300 times for multiple seasons in a row. It's just it's not the way the NFL players should be handled. They drafted a running back this year. They re-signed Malcolm Brown. They're planning to reduce Gurley's workload. And what I say is that is good if you like Todd Gurley. You want him to play as long as possible. If Todd Gurley is elite for 280 carries, let him be elite for 280 carries. stop trying to make him elite for 400 carries. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think what they're doing is the best thing for his career long term, but I would like some positive news to come out on Todd Gurley. If some positive news comes out, he's going to shoot right back up in the top 5 in redraft, a top 5 pick. But for right now, I mean, I'm seeing him in the second round in dynasty leagues, and I'm just like, yep, gimme. I'm good with it. Yellow light, if he's slipping, to the late first, early second, all day. Give me that all day.
Is the arthritis something that they just shoot up before the games or halftime, something like that, or is that just...
It's a pain management issue, so it really depends on how much pain he's in that day. If he doesn't really notice it that much, you're probably not going to take anything. A lot of times they won't just keep shooting these guys up with painkillers. David Chow was talking the other day about how really they don't give a whole lot of narcotics to high dosage narcotics. Maybe they'll get a Tylenol with codeine, but they're not getting hard pain medication because it makes you loopy. I mean, it makes me loopy. I'm sure it makes you guys loopy. You give them hard stuff. So are they probably shooting him up? No, but maybe they're limiting him in practice all week. And maybe he's just one of those guys that's not getting full practices during the week so that he's good on Sunday. I think that is how they're going to manage him this season, as opposed to just shooting him up full of painkillers and ice and hoping he's good to go by Sunday. I think you're going to see a lot more days off for Todd Gurley during the week, but a lot less. I shouldn't say a lot. He's going to have less carries this year than he did last year. I still think he's elite enough to let him run. He's still going to be a top 5 running back, I think.
So basically he's going to have the questionable by him the entire season, missing practices, have people panic, show up on game day,
and beat
Todd Gurley.
Yeah,
80% of Todd Gurley.
I mean, I think that their plan is, as opposed to letting him go 100% for 280 carries and then letting him break down by the end of the season in 14 games, give him 16 games, lower each game's workload, keep him healthy all year. I think that's what their plan is. They're going to mix in a little bit of Darrell Henderson because they spent the draft capital on him. But to think that Todd Gurley is just going to be like the 1B to Henderson's 1A, or that they're going to split 50-50 is kind of ridiculous when you're talking about talent that's that good.
Agreed 100% on that. I think fantasy Twitter is kind of freaked out about this Todd Gurley thing. Every day he seems to drop lower and lower in the mock drafts that I'm in, which is getting to the point where I'm just going to be buying Todd Gurley everywhere that I can get him because, like you said, they limit his workload. It doesn't mean he's going to be a bad running back. I mean, guys like Alvin Kamara has a limited workload. It's basically his whole career, and he's been a top running back, even with that limited workload. So I'm definitely going to be buying Todd Gurley. All right, the next, I got 2 here. They're actually from the same team, so we're going to just tackle them both at the same time. Matt Breida, who's got a multitude of injuries last year. Recently, he's got the torn pec that he suffered in OTAs. And then Jerick McKinnon coming off the ACL, who hadn't played a snap at all for the 49ers. Both of them are sitting out in OTAs right now. Talk about both these guys and give us a green light, red light on these guys.
Yeah, I'm going to go yellow light on both these guys. With Breida, the pec tear was reportedly minor, but his history last year really kind of scares me off of him. Just chronic issues. He seemingly never stops playing, so I guess he's really tough. And that's great, but eventually those are going to catch up to him. Injuries will always catch up to you eventually. So, I just think that of the 2 guys, Matt Breida is the one that I'm more concerned about. Now, McKinnon tore his ACL last year, and he still isn't back to practicing. That's not unexpected again. The team is pretty conservative when it comes to pushing these guys out there in practice. There's no sense to rush them. These are OTAs. This isn't where they make their money. They want him to be healthy in the season. They have plans for him. They paid him so that they could use him. I still expect him to play this year, but I think that running backs have a harder time with ACL tears than a quarterback does. I would say, yellow light is mostly because I think Tevin Coleman is going to be the 1A in this backfield, and he doesn't have those injury concerns, and I think that's why he's the safest option of all these guys.
All right, good stuff there. I know with the Matt Breida thing, it was kind of crazy how he kept getting injured and kept coming back. There was a game, I didn't own him in this league. I was playing against him. I was kind of following along at work on my phone, and I got the note over Twitter like, Matt Breida, injury off the field. It looks bad. It looks bad. And I look about 20 minutes later, he's got like 40 more rushing yards. I'm like, well, I guess it wasn't that bad. He's back in the game already. So it's kind of crazy to see that.
He looks like he dies every time he gets hit. He's just one of those players. There are certain players that when you're watching, when they get hit, they look like they get murdered every time. Chris Thompson is another guy. Like, whenever somebody hits Chris Thompson full on, you're just like, oh, he's dead. Like, he just flew 5 yards back. Like, he's dead. Matt Breida just seemed to be one of those guys that always looked like he was dead when he was getting hit. But for whatever reason, you can't keep the dude down. And maybe the reason you can't keep him down is because he has to stay on the field to keep his job. And I think there's something to be said about guys that have more to lose by being hurt, and he's one of those guys that has a lot to lose by being hurt. So,
good point.
Good on him to try to stay out there and stay strong. But, we saw it at the end of last year. Eventually the injuries got him.
Yep. All right, Ryan. So you got a rookie you want to talk about? Someone that was he missed pretty much the whole season last year. He's been drafted pretty high this year. Who you got?
Next was Darius, guys. I know we've kind of hit ACLs pretty good so far, but man, he's a dude I wanted to see play last year. He was probably my favorite back in last year's class. Tell me he's good. I'd say he's the best. I said he's my favorite. I know what you were thinking there.
He is good. I love Darius, guys, too, man. He just seems like one of those guys. I've had interactions with him on Twitter. I mean, he just seems like a dude that's just
he's awesome on Twitter.
He's just fun to be around. I think that his injury in college predisposed him a little bit to this ACL tear. I've watched that video probably 100 times, and I still can't totally see like how he tore his ACL with that. But again, somehow, when they MRI'd it, he had an ACL tear. So when you have an ACL tear, you got to get fixed. The problem with guys is he had some infection issues afterwards, and he had to get cleaned out 3 more times. Mm-hmm. The good news is that the graft itself was intact, so it was not affected by the infections. The bad news is that when you have those infections, they don't want you doing a whole lot with the knee. So his recovery time, which should have been on track for, that 12-month period, now is probably looking closer to 13, 14 months before he's back to 100%. So I think the team plans on using a committee this year. They brought back AP. Obviously, they still got Chris Thompson. He's his own injury risk. But I think by week 8, guys could be a bona fide bell cow. And I wouldn't draft him expecting him to be that week 1. If you're taking him, you're knowing you're probably going to wait a couple months, maybe 4 to 6 weeks before you're really getting that top 5 round draft capital back. But man, he could be really, really good. Don't get me excited about guys. He's my boy. He's a yellow light because if he's falling, take him. But if he's going in the 2nd round, you're probably reaching a little bit.
Is his running style? We're kind of skipping ahead to the guy I'm going to bring up. Like his violent running style, kind of like with Fournette, something we're going to see lots of little dings pop up and nagging injuries because of how he runs.
Yeah, I can't say for certain. There's no study that says that running backs there's no studies that go running backs that avoid contact, kind of like your Le'Veon Bells of the world, versus a Darius guys who seems to kind of seek out that big hit. That they're any more injury prone than the other guys. I think that what you do see is guys that initiate contact tend to have more of the ankle issues. They tend to have more of the concussion issues because they're leading with their head. They're getting hit in the face a lot more. But I can't say for sure that necessarily he's at a way higher risk. All running backs are at risk of injury. So, he's at risk of injury this year because he's coming off the ACL tear. And that I know for sure. Whether or not his running style really will play a huge role, I can't definitively say that because there's no research that has shown it yet.
All right, good stuff. We're going to stick here with the second-year players, another rookie from last year who had a pretty promising career or a season ahead of him before he got injured, and that's Kerryon Johnson for the Lions. Everyone's kind of hyping him up, as being the next big thing there in Detroit, and they're talking about him being the lead back. He can catch passes, do the whole nine, but he's got that knee issue. What do you think of Kerryon Johnson?
Yeah, so Johnson's one of those guys. Remember when I said that I did the injury histories for the rookies? He was actually a guy that I was concerned about coming into the NFL. He had a labrum tear in high school. He also had recurring shoulder dislocations, so obviously not the same issue as what he dealt with in college or in the NFL of last year. Sorry. But he has a long injury history that led up to the NFL. And because we know that injuries are the best precursor to future injuries, the fact that he has that long history is a concern for me going forward. The MCL, again, he probably could have come back last year, but that team's season was pretty much over by the time he injured that MCL. It should be fully healed. He should be a bell cow. And I think he's worth drafting. I'm not concerned. I'm a green light with the knowledge that he's always going to be an injury risk because of his history.
All right, good stuff. All right, Ryan, I know you weren't a big fan of Kerryon Johnson in any way, but what do you think of that green light that he just gave him, and talk about the next guy we got?
I'm lukewarm on Kerryon Johnson more because of the player and system, but injury-wise, I'm not as worried now, especially after hearing that.
You're just not a big fan of Matt Patricia and that running back by committee offense that he runs there.
No, he's trying to recreate Belichick's model, and all the signs are pointing to that. But that's why I'm not in on Kerryon where he's being drafted. But they're going to run the crap out of the football, so I might be wrong. Who knows? The next guy is Devonta Freeman. I feel like he's always beat up. It hurts. I'm a big Devonta fan and a fan of the next guy we have on there. But, he has foot, groin, and I feel like there's injuries every freaking year. Is he going to be anything like he was or what?
Yeah, he's another one of those guys that looks like he gets murdered every time he gets hit. I actually gave him – he's one of my few green/yellow lights. His risk is always going to be there. He's got that long history. He's a smaller guy. Smaller guys tend to get hit harder. They tend to get hurt more. That's just the facts of life. But, man, does he have everything going for him right now? They lost Tevin Coleman. I don't think Ito Smith is that great. Quadri Allison has some truthers out there, but I don't think that a rookie is going to challenge Devonta Freeman if he's healthy. I think that everything is looking like Devonta Freeman could be a good value this year. So the reason I put him between the green and yellow is because from an injury perspective, he's a yellow light because he's got the risk. But from a fantasy perspective, that risk's already baked into his price. So you might as well go and try to get a guy that has shown in the past to be a top 5 fantasy running back on a team that scores a lot of points. So, yeah, I'm good with it.
So between green and yellow means speed up, right?
yeah, speed up. You just exactly. Speed up. You take him. If he's in the 5th, I'm taking him there all day. Feeling pretty good about it.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to try to hurry up here a little bit so we can get to the commercial break so we don't run too long. 2 guys, one of them's just sort of a general injury-prone guy, and the other one was a undrafted rookie last year that kind of blew up on the scene. Of course, Dalvin Cook for the Vikings and Phillip Lindsay with the wrist injury. What do you think of these 2 guys?
Yeah, so with Cook, he was that victim of one. He was at risk of a compensatory injury anyway because he was coming off the ACL tear, which is what happened with the hamstring strain. 2, the team did not manage that hamstring strain very well. Now, it's a tricky injury, but I just don't think they had opportunities to give him a week or 2 extra, and they chose to push him out there, and then he re-aggravated it. And had they just given him an extra 2 weeks, maybe we're talking about, a guy that's a locked-in second-round pick. So I think that he had a lot going against him last year. If the price is right, You take him. I think he's a yellow light for me. I think that if he's fallen to the third, which I haven't seen a whole lot of yet, I think that's a good value there. As far as Phillip Lindsay, he's going to be my first red light. And I think that Lindsay is a great story, but I don't trust him this year. The team has Royce Freeman. They invested significantly more draft capital in him. I think they want him to be involved in the offense more than he was last year. He was dealing with some injuries himself. And nothing I've seen so far with this wrist injury with Lindsay has given me any hope that this is something that's just progressing like super quickly. So I think that you're going to see a bigger time split for Lindsay. He's a good story, but he's a red light for me. I don't like where he's going in drafts, and I don't think that he's worth the value that some other analyst thinks that he's worth.
Hot take right there. I like it because I'm actually a big Royce Freeman guy. I think that offense, their coach now was the defensive coordinator from the Chicago Bears, and they ran that two-back system with Jerick Cohen and Jordan Howard. And I think he's going to try to bring that system, to the Broncos and sort of have Royce Freeman in that, Jordan Howard role with Lindsay being the Jerick Cohen. And I think Lindsay gets that reduced workload. I think with that reduced workload, he's not as good as where he's being drafted at. He'll still be a good fantasy player. Just I think he's being drafted in like the middle of the second round. So I just don't know if I want to pay that much for a guy that's going to have a limited workload.
Yeah, I've seen him fall a little bit in Dynasty, but it's never past the fifth. So I'm out at that price. I just think there are better options than Lindsay right now that don't have the risk of being in a timeshare.
Good deal. All right, Ryan, go ahead and do the next two on the list that we got here.
Sorry about the crying in the background. He wasn't happy about the Dalvin Cook yellow light. My dog. Next one, speaking of injury prone, Marlon Mack and Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about trusting these guys?
With Marlon Mack, 2 concussions, 2 hamstring strains the last couple of years are the biggest concerns just because those things tend to continue to creep up and they tend to get worse each time. I think the team choosing to remain invested in Mack and not going after, another running back to add to that kind of semi-committee that they got going on there was a vote of confidence. I'm giving him the green light. I think that, you need to get some Marlon Mack in your life. He's a guy that I'm taking over, your Phillip Lindsays of the world just because they're around the same price range. And I think that Marlon Mack has a bigger opportunity to be a full-time workload guy that's taken 70 to 80% of the touches as opposed to a Lindsay. I think is going to be closer to 50-50 this year. As for Fournette, everybody knows that Leonard Fournette is injury. I'm not going to say he's injury prone, but he has had injuries in the past, with the ankle issues that don't seem to be going away, and they don't usually go away. I gave him a yellow light just because I think his price has, like a Carson Wentz, has already kind of baked in the fact that he's an injury risk. The good news is, I guess, that he hasn't had a major injury, but, with the ankle issue seemingly always coming up, it's hard to trust him. You're drafting him hoping you get 12 good games out of him, and you're happy if he does. And if he doesn't, then you knew that taking him. I think 4th round is a pretty good price for Fournette. Late 3rd, I think you could justify it if you need a running back.
Yeah, completely agree with Mack over Phillip Lindsay. I dropped my Colts projections today, and people either loved my Marlon Mack projection or said I was far too high on him. And I didn't think it was that crazy. I have him for like 1,200 total yards.
He's another guy that doesn't
9 touchdowns.
Doesn't have a big injury history outside of those concussions and hamstring strains. So, if he can shake those this year, I think that he's definitely going to be a guy that turns some heads. So, I'd probably be with you on your Mac projections. I think those are good.
Yeah.
All right, and we're going to close it out on a rookie from this year's draft class. Just recently came up on RotoWire that Miles Sanders, rookie for the Philadelphia Eagles, has a hamstring injury. Doesn't seem super serious, but hamstring injuries have those, tendency to sort of linger. What do you think of this injury for Miles Sanders?
Yeah, it's early in the offseason. I'm not super concerned. I hope that he doesn't miss a lot of time. That's the big thing with these rookies. You want to get them practicing as soon as possible. You saw it with Sony Michel last year when you miss significant chunks of the preseason with injury, it's hard to get yourself like fully established at the beginning of the year. I think Sanders has a lot of opportunity in that offense to be I'm not going to say he's a bell cow because I think they're going to use a committee still, but he could be a big play threat for sure in that offense. And the guy, he hasn't had an injury since high school. Obviously he didn't play very much in college because he was sitting behind the best running back in the league right now. But, a heel bruise dating back to high school is really the only thing on his injury history that I got for him. So, he shakes this off and gets full control. Green light for me.
All right. Great stuff so far, guys. We're going to do the tight ends and receivers after the break. So a quick word from our sponsor, guys. We'll be right back.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the fourth quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, it's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
All right, guys, welcome back. I'm here with my co-host Ryan and now Dr. Ethan Turner, officially now. He's talking some injuries with us tonight. We've already covered the running backs and the quarterbacks. Up next is the tight ends. It's a pretty small category of players here we're going to talk about. Ryan, go ahead and kick us off with the first guy on the list there.
First guy we have is O.J. Howard with some issues with his foot and ankle.
Yeah, so 2 years in a row now, ankle injuries ending his season. Not ideal. He's been on the IR twice. The team's not very good, but, Bruce Arians is the new head coach, and he's saying the moon's the limit for Howard, and I tend to agree. I think that he's a high-end tight end option if you miss out on kind of the big three. O.J. Howard is not a bad consolation prize, a couple rounds later. I don't think that these are issues that should creep up continuously. It just seems like, by the end of the season, he just twists his ankle. What are you going to do? That happens in football. To me, he's a green light guy because he has so much potential in a position that doesn't have a whole lot of guys that are producing well. So, he was a top 10. He was a top 10 option in standard leagues last year, and he only played in 10 games. So that just tells you he's already broken out. Don't shy away from a guy because he hasn't broken out. He's broken out. The dude he was on pace for a top 5 season last year. So yeah, absolutely. Give me some O.J. Howard all day.
Was that a green light on O.J. Howard? I missed it.
That's a green light.
Green light on O.J. Howard. All right, good stuff. The next guy we got here actually made a return from an injury last year towards the end of the season. Didn't really look like he should have been back yet. But Hunter Henry is my next guy on here. What do you think of Hunter Henry?
Yeah, I was pretty adamant that they shouldn't bring him back because it just seemed negligent to me to bring him back at that point. And he didn't really do much. I think he played like 15 plays, maybe a little bit less than that. So he had 1 target in that playoff game. So again, it wasn't worth it to bring him back. not the risk, I guess, that I would want my team taking. But hey, I'm not seeing him practice all year, so maybe they thought he was good to go. Obviously, they thought he was healthy enough to play. I think he's going to be one of those guys that he bounced back huge. Take the injury discount for sure. Green light, 15 months post his initial ACL tear, well past the 12-month mark that I'm looking for. Lost Tyrell Williams. I think he's going to start eating into Mike Williams a little bit. Keenan Allen may still have 150 targets. I don't know. But I think a healthy Hunter Henry, again, is one of those guys that you can't just pass up on. You got to take the injury discount while you got it.
All right, good stuff there. So definitely green light on Hunter Henry. The next guy we got, Ryan's a little bit of an older tight end. What you got next?
Yeah, I was actually going to say what affects him more for Delaney Walker, his age or his ankle. But
I don't know, man, because that ankle is pretty ugly. Probably the most brutal injury that you see often in the NFL is that ankle fracture / dislocation, which is what he had. Once you dislocate an ankle, it's almost a given that you're going to fracture your fibula as well. So I honestly was wondering if we were ever going to see him play again, given his age, given the severity of the injury. He has come out and said he's about 85% right now. That's probably a little generous. Everyone never trust when a player or a coach says about a player's injury. It's almost always just garbage. There's no reason for them to be honest about it, and say that, oh yeah, we're not feeling very good. I mean, to me, he's a yellow light because he was healthy for so long and so effective for so long. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to be able to come back. He's a pro. This would typically be a red light injury for me, but because his value has sunk to the point where you're basically taking, a 12th round or later flyer on him, I mean, he's going to stay a yellow light because if you're just waiting on tight end, why not just take him in the last couple of rounds and maybe he becomes a guy that you can fill a spot start a couple weeks. I mean, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm all about streaming, so yeah.
All right, and the last one I got for tight end actually is going to be two from the same team. Jack Doyle, who had a couple injuries last year, a hip injury I think was the one that finally put him out for the season. And then Eric Ebron seemed to have pretty much everything. I mean, he had hip, he had ankle, he had groin, he had everything in team last year. These two guys, how about them a little bit for the Colts?
Yeah, so Doyle eventually did have surgery to address kind of the hip issue, the pain that he was having last year that eventually took him out. That should ideally fix the issue. Most likely that it is scope. Again, taking a camera, going in, seeing what the heck is causing the issue. If it's something they can take care of right then and there, they're going to. He's probably going to be on the lower end of guys that I think are draftable. Again, another late round flyer guy. I don't know if he's better than Eric Ebron, so they're on the same team. You got to take the better tight end. I don't think that he's better, but man, it seems like Andrew Luck and him have this kind of weird connection. So again, he's worth a flyer, but I'm not really drafting him probably in a redraft league this year. As far as Ebron goes, he did play all 18 games for the Colts, had a lot of issues. He did also have groin surgery earlier this month. So, again, this is probably a maintenance issue. It's probably something that was bothering him off and on throughout the year. Fixes it up in the offseason, should be back to go. I'd be drafting kind of a backup tight end late if Ebron is my tight end 1, if it doesn't seem like he's healthy by the preseason. If he's healthy in the preseason, he's going full bore, take Ebron and don't worry about anything else. But if it seems like his health is in question, grab a backup, a Delaney Walker type, somebody that can start for a couple weeks for you, and then, cut that guy once Ebron is good to go. All
right, good stuff. All right, Ryan, kick off the wide receivers for us.
First one to start out with is Marvin Jones, who had his season-ending knee injury last year, and see coming back. I think he affects Golladay more than anybody. It helps Golladay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this injury was kind of interesting because they came out during the season and said it was a bone bruise, which can take a long time to heal, but then eventually in a knee scope, which again they're going to see what's wrong. So they didn't know for sure that it was a bone bruise. That's what that tells me. Misses, basically the back end of that season. And the team shut down pretty much everybody that got injured at the end of last season. I think that Marvin Jones is going to be okay. He's going to probably come back sometime later this preseason. And I think that he's going to be a solid wide receiver 2 in the offense. He's not going to be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy by any stretch, but he's one of those guys that is a little bit older, kind of gets put out in draft just because people want to draft the wide receiver 2. But that offense has historically been an offense that throws a lot. I don't know if that's still going to be the case, but I think he's worth a 9th or 10th round pick if he's there for sure.
All right, good stuff. I'm going to group these next two together because I have them both on my dynasty team. That's what I'm going to kind of give them a little connection there. And I just traded away Corey Davis today, so these are my wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 on my team. Is Allen Robinson, who's just generally injury prone, it seems. I know he had that big ACL injury a couple years ago. Last year he was playing for a new team, so was it the team that was giving him the problem, or was it the fact that he was still sort of recovering from the injury? And then Dante Pettis with an ankle injury late in the season, missed basically like the last game of the season. It seems to be okay now, but just talk about those two guys a little bit for me. Ryan's dog is just trying to break into my house right now, it sounds like.
Yeah, I just muted. He's trying to beat me in my room.
Oh, he seems upset. So Allen Robinson, he missed 3 games last year, coming off that ACL tear again. Guys that come off ACL tears are more prone to injury the next year. I still think he has potential to kind of become the number 1 option in Chicago. You're probably taking him as your wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 3 if you're kind of going a pseudo no running back strategy. He's a green light for me in 2019. I think he's going to bounce back. I think that because he has the potential to be that number 1 option, he's worth the risk. But again, it's probably more to do with the ACL tear, kind of predisposing him to some compensatory injuries as opposed to him being like actually injury prone.
Fair enough. What about Dante Pettis with his ankle injury last year?
Yeah, so he had knee and ankle injuries kind of slowing him down in 2018. Now he has Deebo Samuel and he has Jalen Hurd to compete with. From an injury perspective, he should be fine. That's a green light. From a competition perspective, though, I'm much more concerned than I was. I think that the Pettis hype is you either love Pettis or you're just kind of lukewarm on him. I tend to be more of the lukewarm type. I think that he's a good player, but is he going to be elite in his second year? Probably not. He's worth having on your dynasty team for sure. From a health perspective, I think he'll be fine. And he's competing with other rookies, so who knows? Maybe he is going to show out this year, and I'm going to be totally wrong.
All right, Ryan. We got 2 receivers up next that are both from the NFC West here. We'll go ahead and talk about these 2 guys a little bit.
And just like everybody else that we mentioned, is also on Jeff's fantasy team. The next
I own everybody.
I'm noticing a trend here.
Next two we got are Christian Kirk in his foot and Cooper Kupp in his ACL.
Yeah, so Christian Kirk with the foot injury, kind of in the same situation that Pettis is in, where the team has invested a lot in the offseason to surround really they've overhauled that offense. And I think Kirk has a role in that offense, but he's competing now with a 4.3 speedster that I love, Andy Isabella. They took him in the 2nd. And then you've got Hakeem Butler, who a lot of people were touting as, a top 3 rookie wide receiver. They took in the 4th. That dude's 6'6" and runs a 4.49. There aren't very many dudes that can do that. He's a freak size specimen. Larry Fitzgerald is still going to be a thing. So I think that everyone has plans for this, this Cliff Kingsbury offense with Kyler Murray and David Johnson. And my question is who is going to be the guy that disappoints you? And they're probably going to be 2 or 3 of them. And because I don't think the offensive line is good, and I don't know if Kirk is going to be one of those guys, I tend to believe that he will be a casualty of the offense building around him and him just being good, not great. So, from an injury perspective, he should be fine. The foot injury should be healed, but I would rather take one of those other guys in the offense and fantasy. As far as Cooper Kupp goes, he is a red light for me. He's a red light.
Hot take.
This is not a hot take. Cooper Kupp tore his ACL in week 10. Week 10. Now, normally a fantasy season is 15 weeks. If you're playing in a normal league, maybe 16. Your playoffs start in week 13 usually. Week 10 is the 12-month mark. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking at ACL tears. And they need that 12 months to return to pre-injury form. That is well established. So I think that applies here. He needs more time than what people are drafting him as. They think they're getting what they got before he tore his ACL last year. And the likelihood of that happening is slim. I'm saying you need to stay away from Cooper Kupp. If you really love him, buy him at week 4, week 5, when he starts to turn the corner. Do not buy him in your startup drafts because you're going to be disappointed when you're taking him as your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 and he's not producing. But, again, if we're talking about dynasty, yeah, go buy Cooper Kupp. Whatever. Do what you want. But
doesn't that mean he'll be 27 by the time he's relevant?
Yeah, but wide receivers can play until they're in their 30s, and Cooper Kupp is good enough to be relevant into his 30s. I just think that if we're talking just 2019, he's a red light. Like, it's just too much risk for me. Where he's going, I'm out. I don't think that you're going to get what you want out of him. And I'm gonna skip ahead on our thing because I have the same argument for Will Fuller, who is also on this list. Again, Will Fuller, I think he tore his in week 8. If you're expecting him to produce, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Wait on these guys. Try to acquire them later after the season has begun. The other issue with Fuller, he is at a greater risk of the hamstring strains because he already had a history of them prior to his injury. So he is actually in a worse situation than Kupp is, despite Kupp having 2 more weeks on him in terms of when his injury occurred. So Will Fuller, Cooper Kupp, those are my 2 guys. I'm planting my flag on right now. If you draft them and they disappoint you and you come back to me, I'm not going to feel bad about it because I told you right here. If they do great, you can rub it in my face. But I'm telling you right now, I am willing to die on this hill because I think that the love for them is people have the blinders on. They're not paying attention.
Hey, Ethan, I got one thing to say to you. I'm not a doctor and neither are you. Oh, wait. Never mind.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to be updating one of their projections in one of them so far. That Will Fuller seems a little high now.
Yeah, agreed. All right, the next guy I got on my list is just a constant injury history guy. I mean, he seems like he's injured every single year. Shows amazing promise when he's on the field. He just can't stay on the field, and that's, of course, Sammy Watkins, who's in one of the best offenses in the league and could, if he plays 16 games, could be a top 10 receiver if he can stay healthy. What about Sammy Watkins?
Yeah, we're on a bad streak here because he is a red light for me as well. Sammy Watkins hasn't gone over 600 yards in 3 seasons, primarily because he can't shake the lower body injuries. It's a hamstring, it's an ankle, it's a foot. He has basically everything you can imagine in his history as far as things you don't want to see. He's got them. So, for me, Sammy Watkins is one of those guys that I never seem to take him in the draft. He's out to the
Oh, I think we're losing Ethan here.
Yeah, I think it too.
I think we just lost Ethan. I don't know. Ethan, are you still there? Can you hear us? All right, I'm going to try calling him back here in just a second. Yeah, so Ryan, I got a question for you with Sammy Watkins. If he is a red light, like Ethan says, who is the receiver that you want to own with the Chiefs? If it's not, obviously Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, who is it? Is it McCole Hardman? Is it Demarcus Robinson?
Probably, I guess, say Demarcus Robinson, but it is not that talented receiving core. I think it's Kelsey or bust. But I even worked on those projections for him. It was a mess. You knew he was going to produce, but you didn't know where it's going. It could just be spread out.
Right.
There might not be that wide receiver one. I think there has to be a 500 to 700 yard regression for Mahomes, regardless.
Yep, agreed. All right, we did get Ethan back, it seems. So we're going to go ahead and move on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I was like talking and could hear everything, but whatever. It's cool.
So Sammy Watkins, you said was a red light. You just not touching him, right?
Red light. I'm not touching him until he shows me he can be healthy for a full season.
All right. The next guy I got on the list here is a rookie from last year that didn't play a single snap. And I just actually got a sleeper alert about 2 hours ago saying that he looks like he's going to be fully healthy and is the favorite to get the number 2 receiver position for the Colts, and that's Deon Cain. What do you think about him and his ACL injury?
Yeah, so prior to that sleeper alert, everything that I could find was showing that he wasn't moving as quickly as what I would have expected. So that's good that now we're getting some positive news. I always like to see that. I don't know if he is the wide receiver 2. I had him at a red light when I didn't hear that update, but now I'm starting to think he's more of a yellow-red. For me, I think that I don't see him starting, but man, they seem to love him over there. So, I'm going to go with what I said last year about Chris Carson. If all of the love from the coaches is coming for a guy that you don't expect, eventually you have to pay attention to what they're saying. And if the coaches love him and it sounds like he's going to be healthy, I'll give him a yellow light. Take a late round flyer on him because that offense is going to be darn good. Andrew Luck is going to be a beast again. And I think that, if he's healthy, yeah, take the late round flyer on him because I don't think very many people outside of the people in the dynasty community that just like love this kid are going to be on him in redraft. So yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, good stuff. All right, Ryan, we got an older guy on our list here, another like these Delaney Walker type guys. Talk about Manny Sanders a little bit.
We got Manny Sanders with an Achilles, which I know talked about can sometimes be a kiss of death for them older guys.
That's a kiss of death. That's a red light. I don't players with Achilles tears the year after they have them. I especially don't draft players that tore their Achilles in December, like Emmanuel Sanders did. I mean, typical recovery is 11 to 13 months on average. If that's just to return to play, that's not even that they're going to be good in 11 to 13 months. Most players are not, especially older players. Players in their 30s that tear their Achilles are not typically better off for it. To me, I'm out on Sanders unless I'm taking him in unless we start seeing some practice where he is doing what he says he should be doing. Even then, I'm probably out on Emmanuel Sanders. Take a guy, take Deshaun Hamilton, take Cortland Sutton, where they're at right now before you take Emmanuel Sanders, because I just think that it's a trap. Achilles tears, trap.
It's a trap.
All right, I got one more guy on here that I want to talk about that's sort of interesting to me, and then we got a couple of top guys that I wanted to, Ryan can talk about a little bit. And this is a guy that our last guest, I don't know if you caught our last show, he was the Jinx. He comes on once a year and talks about some guys, and he always jinxes these guys. And he was big on Marquise Lee last year. Marquise Lee, of course, tears his ACL. And he went on the podcast this past show and says he's all about Marquise Lee again this year, coming back and being strong. What's your thoughts on Marquise Lee?
That seems like a trap. The good news is that, I guess good news. There's no good news when you're talking about injuries. These are all bad news. I want these guys to be healthy. Let's just clear the air there. The good thing about Lee's situation is he tore his ACL in August. That's better than tearing your ACL in October, November, December. He's still on pace to return kind of later in the preseason. He's a red light for me. I just don't think that where you're getting him at, I think you're going to find better options that don't have any injury risk. Just take an upside rookie, take a different guy later in your drafts. If Marquise Lee is your boy and you love him, you can take him. I'm not going to be upset with you. You run your own fantasy teams, but for me, why take an unnecessary risk? I guess I'm risk averse in that regard. When we're talking late rounds, I can find somebody else that has probably higher upside than Marquise Lee does. So, yeah, I'm out on Marquise Lee. Take Keelan Cole. It's same situation. Take
D.D.
Westbrook's falling. Take one of those guys if you want a piece of that offense with Nick Foles, which
why would you?
Why would you?
Probably shouldn't, but that's okay. Hey, take one of those guys before you go and and take Marquise Lee, you're going to get them around the same spot in the draft, or at least one of them. So,
all right, Ryan, we got two guys that are basically top 10, maybe even top 5 on one of these guys. Go ahead and talk about the next two guys on the list here.
Oh, you do that. I'd rather ask about the last guy myself, because that one's near and dear to my heart, even though I absolutely love A.J. Green, and he always ends up in my fantasy teams.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, one of them is A.J. Green, who obviously has had 2 injuries back-to-back now, hasn't finished the season. And then OBJ, who's also, I don't think, finished the last 2 seasons and seems to be injury-prone in his own right. I think he's only had 1 complete season so far, in his career. Touch on these two guys a little bit, A.J. Green and OBJ.
Yeah, so A.J. Green is the one I'm more concerned about. I'm going to give him a yellow light. Toe injuries, he had turf toe, and then he basically tore the ligament. Turf toe is just a sprain of the big toe, so that's a fancy word, just called a toe sprain, and it's the same thing. They're difficult to rehab. That's the big thing. Foot, toe injuries, if it's actually truly in the foot, from a PT perspective, there's not a whole lot of stuff that I can make your foot do, like specifically just your foot. And specifically just your big toe, like a lot of stretching, a lot of, he had surgery to repair it. So that's a concern because there's not a lot of space down there. So you get some scar tissue built up, and then it just keeps giving you issues. Green had turf toe in 2014, I believe, that also bothered him. So, this isn't the first time he's had this issue. And the problem is your big toe is your main push-off point. When you go to take off on a route, your toe, it comes up with contact onto the ground. So difficult to rehab, hard to come back from. I do think that Green will be healthy to start the year. I think the team is going to take it easy with him this offseason. He's not going to practice a whole lot because they want him. They want him when the games matter. So he's getting a yellow light because he's elite. His injury is baked into his price, but the injury is something that could continue to give him issues. As far as OBJ, dude, why you got to give me OBJ right now? I love OBJ. He's a green light for me because the injury 2 years ago was an ankle, basically got caught up from behind, similar to Delaney Walker this year, gets caught up from behind, ankle dislocates, breaks his fibula. Okay, that sucks. Again, those are things that happen. They don't necessarily immediately equate to more ankle issues. Last year, did he really want to finish the season last year? He is clearly upset. He didn't want to play there. I'm not going to say that a player is intentionally staying out, but I don't think he had a lot to play for. And therefore, when you have that, it's not uncommon to see a guy kind of a 4-week injury turn into a 6-week injury, or a 3-week injury turns into a 5-week injury, so that they don't have to really worry about, a bigger injury coming back too soon and having this big catastrophic injury that hurts their chances to make money down the road. Dude, OBJ and Baker Mayfield is going to be the funnest thing to watch on turf next season. I'm just calling it right now. There's so much swag on that team. I just can't even handle it. So, yeah, green light for OBJ.
Hey, remind me again, Ethan, who is your team? I don't remember who your team is.
I'm a Steelers fan. We are the most dramatic team on turf this year, or at least we were last year and this offseason. But we got rid of all the drama.
You hope.
And I always say this when somebody brings this up. Was there a team that was more prepared to lose their number one running back and their number one wide receiver at the same time than the Steelers were? You got Juju Smith-Schuster, who's already a superstar. You got James Conner and Jalen Samuels, and now Benny the Snail Snell coming in to basically do 90% of what Bell was doing in a safer workload capacity in terms of they're spreading the ball out between the two, maybe three of them now. I don't know if there's very many teams that can lose their best wide receiver and their best running back in the same offseason and still look as good offensively as what the Steelers do. So
yeah,
that's what I have to say about that.
Not to mention, not only were they the number one, receiver and running back on that team, but they're the number one receiver and running back, potentially in the NFL at any given time. So that's a big chunk that they're losing. But you're right. I think they have the pieces to sort of recover from that. So it could be an addition by subtraction and end up being a better thing for them in the long run.
I mean, with losing those guys, they made it all the way to third place in the AFC North last year. It was an accomplishment.
Who was first place, Ryan? Remind me again. Who won the division?
That's my Ravens. But it was, speaking of them, what's up with Hollywood Brown? The Liz Frank injury, I don't know much about. I know it's scary from what I've heard, and I know they drafted him in the first round after knowing that was there.
Yeah, I'm going to just withhold this information because you were bashing on my Steelers, and I know you're a Ravens fan. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say I was going to call a real doctor.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, MDs are real doctors. PT are also doctors, too. Let's not disrespect professions here. Hollywood Brown, yellow light. Typically, a Liz Frank injury would be a red light for me. So, Liz Frank injury, if this is my foot, the bones in your hand and your foot are pretty similarly. Think of your fingers as your toes. They're made very similarly. It's kind of weird. Don't look into it too much. But basically, Liz Frank injury is the middle of your foot, and it's either a combination of a fracture, a dislocation where the bones kind of shift one way, or it's both. So usually when you need surgery like Hollywood Brown did, it's a combination of a fracture of these big long bones in your foot, and they've shifted and dislocated as well. And what they do is they go in, they put some hardware on it, they screw it all in place, they put it back in alignment, they put a big plate on top of it, and then they let it heal like that. And then when they're done, occasionally, most often, you will have to go back in and get rid of the plate. So then the bones have healed, they're where they need to be. But so don't be surprised if you hear on the road that he has a second foot surgery to remove the hardware. That's what I'm saying about Liz Franks. They're not good injuries to have for a speed wide receiver. I don't like foot injuries with fast wide receivers. But Hollywood Brown he's a freak. He is so fast.
I'm
sad he couldn't run the 40. I'm sad because, I always say that there are certain players when you're watching them that you just know. Like I'm not a huge film watching guy, but I watch a lot of college football for fun. And dude, when Hollywood Brown's on the field, he is way faster than everybody in college. Will he be that much faster than everybody in the NFL? I don't know. I can't see him run his 40. I have no idea how fast he actually is, but he sure looks fast. He's got that Tyreek Hill. Holy crap, that dude is elite fast. So if he can return to that, man, that's nice. But foot injury, speed receiver, not a good combination. Worth a lay-down flyer and redraft.
165 pounds, too, on top of that, which isn't a good thing.
He's little. I haven't seen him get hit hard.
He does that fall down thing when he sees that hit coming. He does the old school Reggie
That's what
Wayne.
you have to do when you're 165 pounds.
Yeah.
When you're 165 pounds, you better fall down or you're going to get knocked back 20 yards. Ask Chris Thompson.
He's wiry, man.
He's the little guy. So his size alone makes him an injury risk. There are not very many guys that are that small. But the fact that they took him in the first round tells me that the Ravens, who know more about the state of his foot, they've seen the x-rays, they've done all their own tests. I haven't been able to do that. I just know that it's a Liz Frank injury and he had surgery. If they're cool with him in the first round, he's not going to get a red light for me. So I'm going to go yellow light. He's worth a late round flyer and redraft because, shoot, man, he only needs one or two catches and he can go big for you. So hopefully he doesn't do that against the Steelers. But
Artie Burns ain't out there anymore. So
I'm more worried about Miles Boykin as a Steelers fan personally because he's quick too. So
he's fast for a big man.
That offense is going to be so unique compared to everything else that's being run in the NFL because their wide receivers are really fast, but their quarterback can't throw, but yet he can run.
Whoa.
And they have they just drafted Justice Hill, who I love, who's also wicked fast. So that's just I just can't wait to see. I can't wait for football.
I was not going to buy Madden this year until the draft happened.
I just want football. That is just going to be. It's just going to be a wild offense. There's going to be quite a few offenses that I can't wait to see what Arizona does. I can't wait to see.
You're a Steelers fan excited about a Ravens offense. I'm
excited.
That proves how excited you are for football.
I just love football, man. I just I want
so
the Steelers.
so
I want
so
the
far,
Steelers to win, but man, I just want the league to be entertaining. That's my only goal.
yeah,
That's
so
all I
far
want.
you've hyped up the Cleveland Browns. You just hyped up the Ravens offense. I think Steeler Nation right now is looking at you like you Le'Veon Bell / Antonio Brown. Are you going to be leaving us as a fan base?
No way, man. No way. I'm loyal to the end. I'm just saying I love good football. I can tell you some offenses that aren't going to be good. I'm looking at you, Miami. I'm looking at you, Buffalo. The Giants could be interesting, maybe, if they switch their quarterback, but they probably won't. But no, I think the league's in a good spot. I'm just curious to see what the Ravens do, because I don't know if Lamar Jackson is a good enough passer to use all these sweet weapons they just gave him that are wicked fast. Like if you can only throw the ball like 40 yards accurately, it's Hollywood Brown isn't going to do you much good 60 yards down the field. So
luckily, I'm the one that made this Skype phone call, so only I have the hang up button, because Ryan may have just hit it if he did have that hang up button.
I thought
Ryan's actually writing an article right now, Ethan, and he told me that it was like 2,500 words so far. And I said,
crap.
so it's...
I haven't written 2,500 words ever in my whole... added all my articles together.
Yeah, I told him that it's more words than Lamar Jackson's passing yards will be this year.
Lamar Jackson, he's going to have over 3,000 passing yards this year. Mark it down. I tricked 80 or over 70% of Twitter into believing it. And agreeing with me.
If he has 3,000, what would your over-under on him? 3,200? I think 3,200 passing yards would be like, if you own Lamar Jackson in fantasy, 3,200 passing yards, you are freaking stoked.
That puts you
because he's going to run for at least 700.
Yep.
If he stays healthy, like 700 yards rushing, 3,200. I mean, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I took him in a dynasty league startup. I'm just saying. Here's my QB2. So I think that the upside for him to be like a Mike Vick level athlete fantasy asset is like within his realm of possibilities. And dude, give me that. Gobble that up.
Agreed.
And then take Big Ben later in the draft, because
I did it with him and Kirk Cousins in my startup. I just did.
Nice.
Yeah. The startup I ended up with Cam and Lamar Jackson, and then 3 rounds later I got Kirk Cousins, because apparently nobody likes Kirk Cousins in fantasy anymore. I'm not sure what that's all about. But,
interesting.
I was surprised, but whatever. I'll take it.
All right, guys, that wraps up the podcast, man. Ethan, thank you very, very much for coming on. I definitely want to get you on during the season to talk some injuries as well. We'll try to squeeze you in there. We go to Tuesday night during the season, and I definitely want to see if we can get you on. Tell us again where we can follow you at, and if you're writing or doing podcasts, where else we can follow you at.
Yeah, so I am at eTurnerFF_PT. A lot of tweets this summer because, again, I'm studying for those boards. Got to make sure that I can use that big doctor license that I've got. But you can find work that I do at dynasty101.com. I just we just dropped our rookie rookie digest. I did injury histories. If you like the stuff that I'm talking about when I bring up a player's history, you want to know how risky I think a rookie is this year, you can go on there. You can buy that whole database for $4. If you share it with me, tagged on Twitter, I will put you on the document that I use to track injuries all year round, so that will always maintain its integrity. You can always look on there to see what is going on with those players. Nice. $4. I mean, come on, guys. It's $4.
That's half the price of a Starbucks coffee.
That's you're going to spend $4 watching this just in the internet costs. So just go buy this digest. Even if it's just the injury portion, obviously there's a whole lot of good content in there. You should get it all. But that's my magnum opus. The other stuff you can find me on Dynasty Happy Hour. I do a lot of injury stuff with them. And I also work for FF Statistics as their in-house injury analyst. So a lot of their articles have quotes from me on players. They're getting ready to drop a digest as well for redraft. I'll have a lot of quotes on guys for injuries this season as well. So if you can listen to this show, or you can go read the articles there. You can find my work there too as well.
Awesome, man.
Again, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you guys bringing me back. This is a lot of fun. I love this rapid fire stuff. This is like my jam.
All right.
Always welcome, man.
Yeah, always welcome. Like I said, definitely want to get you on during the season so we can talk injuries, man. And all right, guys, for Ryan.